Hello, everyone. So this is our first webinar with our brand new name. We are now Care for the Caregivers, and I'm so thrilled today to have Catherine Whitcher with us for our first webinar, being rebranded and really making sure that we're very accessible for every single person who needs help on this journey. So today we have Catherine, and Catherine is the founder of Iep Coach Mentorship program and networking, and has had over 20 years of experience in building IEPs for the real world. I have personally known about 3 or 4 friends who have gone through your training program and are now advocates and help other parents build better IEPs. And I know that the work that you do is helping thousands of families, and I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day today to be here. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm excited to be here, answer some questions, drop some tips for this school year, which we all know feels very heavy, very chaotic, and lots of things to figure out. All right. Michelle, can you guys see? Are we good?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to share 12 questions that you can ask before, during, and after the IEP. Now, during this, if you're here live, I want to encourage you to use the chat box. My history is that, yes, I'm a special needs sibling, but I'm also a former classroom special education teacher, which means I can multitask, and I'm going to run the chat box and answer as many questions as I can because you're here, and I want to make sure that you get the answers that you're looking for. The Special Education Inner Circle is a professional development program that I have in addition to the Master IEP Coach Mentorship, and it's also a podcast. So if you're not already listening, you can always listen to that on the go also. One of the big things that I love to share every time I'm speaking, if you've heard me anywhere, you're going to hear me talk about the purpose and findings of IDEA law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to tell you where to look. And the purpose and findings of IDEA law really lay out our entire purpose of the IEP, which we tend to forget when we're in the weeds, doing the negotiating, deciding what's going to happen next. So we all hear that the purpose of an IEP is for a free and appropriate public education. We all know that also appropriate is a very gray word, and that's what causes a lot of the tension, a lot of the arguments. I'm just going to call it out. They're arguments. It's frustration. It's a disagreement. What I think is appropriate is different than what you think is appropriate. But if we step into the next level of this purpose and findings of IDEA law, and we see that it is also to meet a child's unique needs and to prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living, it starts to give us clarity of why we're creating this document. It's not just a document to help a child get an education. It's actually a document to help prepare a child for further education, employment, independent living. And that's a great self-check to do every time we're talking about something. Is this really relevant to my child now and in the future? Because this document, when it's created in a way that it works in the real world, as Michelle mentioned, that's where I'm focused at. I want this to work in the real world. Being a special needs sibling, having a brother who's 44 with Down syndrome, I know what the adult disability world looks like. I see what he uses every day in his life when it comes to skills for independence. I see what it takes. I see what his friends, the people in his community, are using every day. And I'm really thinking back to what can we do as teachers, as parents, as therapists to make sure that we're focused on not just the short term, but also the long term. So you'll get a copy of this Iep Priority Matrix. It really helps us lay out what do we need to talk about in the meeting and what can we talk about outside of the meeting? What do we need to prioritize as a conversation with the team? What do we need to prioritize as maybe a conversation that can happen outside of that meeting? Because we all know those meetings go by way too fast, or they seem to last way too long and you're exhausted, and by the end your thoughts are scrambled and you don't even know where to start. So I'm going to start talking about some of these questions that you should be asking. And again, if you're here live, I want to encourage you to use the chat box, and I'll be peeping in there and seeing what's going on to make sure you're getting your questions answered. These 12 questions are not your standard questions. You can go Google, what should be in an IEP, who's supposed to be on your IEP team, I'm looking for you to seek the information that is often forgotten, the things that will make a huge difference in your child's education, but we often are not talking about these 12 things. So the first thing is, do you know the full continuum of placements? That's the educational jargon of, do you know what's available in your district? And, just because it's not available doesn't mean that we can't create it, but let's just start with what's available. Most of the time, what happens is, and yeah, I'm going to hop all the way to the end of the IEP. Most of the time at the end of the IEP meeting, we say, okay, so based on all of this, we're recommending this classroom. Sounds good. And at this point, everybody's just like, okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, let's just go. Let's just do this classroom. Sometimes there's a discussion about the classroom at the end because there's questions. Is this the right classroom? What else has been considered? But most often what has not happened is that the parent has not had the same amount of knowledge about the other placements, the other options in the district. So how can you be an equal IEP team member if decisions are being made about placement and you don't know what the other placements look like? You might know what your own child's classroom looks like if they are attending in the same one for the next year. You might know what it looks like because you've had a friend or, that has had their child that goes through that classroom. But I really want you to understand why a certain placement is being recommended. So special education is a service, not a place, but we need a place for the service to take place, right? So we have to have services somewhere. And oftentimes that's in a specialized environment. But I want you to know, why was classroom B chosen and not classroom A or classroom C? And do you have the information that you need to feel confident that you're making the best decision possible? So your buzzwords in here is full continuum of placements. That's what you're looking for, is full continuum of placements. So if you've got questions about that, make sure to reach out. And this is a conversation that you need to open up with your IEP team. If you are a professional who is watching this, please open up this conversation. Guess what? Having the conversation, even though it might feel a little awkward or like, hey, just so you know, there's these 3 places that we've really talked about, or that are available, or that are within an hour of your house. Sometimes people think, well, if we open up that conversation, then there's going to be problems. I'm telling you, you want to have the conversation before versus after the decision has been made. All right, here's the next one. We're kind of working our way backwards through a little bit through the IEP right now. Do you know how current service minutes are met? This is really important, especially in the beginning of the school year, because we don't want to go a whole school year and figure out that what you thought was happening for speech therapy or OT or resource rooms is absolutely not even close to what actually was happening. Most of the time in the back of the IEP, there are some just bulk minutes, and depending on how your district writes it, it could be 90 minutes a month. Maybe it's 60 minutes a week. Maybe it's, 240 minutes a semester. It's truly written differently everywhere across the country. What's most important is that you understand how they are written and how they are being taken care of in the school system. So is it large group, small group, a little bit of each? Who's running the group? Is the speech therapist and the OT, are they working together and counting their minutes at the same time? That happens a lot. Sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes that's not appropriate. So I want you to ask this question and find out, how are the service minutes being met? The next one is, do you know what curriculum is being used? I want you as a parent and even you as a teacher, again, it is so important for us to talk about curriculum in special education. I will tell you, being a former special education teacher, I walked into my classroom and I was so excited, right? I was a brand new teacher. I got my classroom. I walk in, I have a desk for myself. I've got some desks and some chairs, and I've got a stack of IEPs inside of a bright green milk crate sitting on top of my desk. And that's it. That was all. My story is not unique in that. Most special education teachers will tell you of some story like that. Maybe not in every district, maybe not every position they've taken. Maybe it happened in the beginning and then they built up their, toolbox so that that never happened again. But I will tell you, knowing what curriculum is being used in the classroom, and this does not mean that we have one reading curriculum and everybody has to use it. What I'm looking for is, do we have some research-based curriculum that is being used in the classroom to ensure that we are just not having an eclectic type of approach saying, oh, let's learn a little bit about this today. Let's learn a little bit about that next month. Let's track some data on the IEP goals. And it's kind of this puzzle that we put together of all the things that we can just learn this year. I want to see some structure in that. And again, not every minute has to be structured. Not every lesson has to come from that curriculum, but I'm asking you to double check that there's some type of curriculum as a foundation that is being used. One that is used very often is N2Y, News to You. It's also called Unique Learning System. They are an online curriculum company that only schools can access. They have resources for parents, but it's for schools to purchase. It's a great foundation for a special education program. So that would be kind of a starting point. If you wanted to kind of see what I was talking about, that would be a starting point to look. And of course, there's many other curriculums also out there. All right, next one. Do you know what data is being taken for each goal? So when you look at the goals and you see that your child is supposed to be doing something, let's say answering WH questions, how is that being tracked? It says in the IEP, are there charts that are being made? Is it teacher observation? Is there a work portfolio? I want you to know what data is being taken for each goal, because we talk about data all the time. We talk about you have to have data to make decisions. Decisions are only as good as the data that you take. But a lot of times we're saying something generic like, can you show me the data for the IEP goals? I want you to take it one step further. Can you please show me the work portfolio? Can you show me the raw data, the observation charts, the tally marks? However it is listed in the IEP for data to be taken in that IEP goal, I want you to go next level and I want you to ask specifically for that. That's going to help you as a parent stand out. And for our professionals who are watching, when you provide that exact data that is listed in the IEP with the progress notes on a regular basis, you're keeping the communication open about what is happening and what is not happening. Because guess what? We all know that things don't go perfect. We all know that sometimes an IEP goal had to kind of fall to the bottom of the priority list because we had some other social, emotional, or behavioral things that are happening. So maybe we didn't get to that reading goal as much as we wanted to. It's okay. Be honest. Share the data that you do have. That's what I think, that we're all looking for, right? Is some honesty of what's really happening during the school day. What can we be working on together? And how are we going to really build this plan to prepare the child for the future? All right, next area. Is there a clear parent input statement? Every IEP, no matter where you're at, has an area for parent input. Now, a lot of times it's called something like parent educational concerns. It's typically used as two different ways. One, either a dumping ground of like, here's all the things that mom's mad about, or it's left almost blank. Parent has no concerns at this time. Have you ever seen a parent of a child with a disability who literally had zero concerns at this time? Zero. No, that's not true. Okay. Or we see something like, mom is concerned because James keeps leaving his coat on the bus. No, I'm looking for true parent input. It's one of the things that I love to teach inside of the Master IEP Coach Mentorship, is how to write a parent input statement that becomes the driver, the leader of the IEP. You don't have to be the expert in all the things special education to be able to write an amazing parent input that helps guide where the experts can be working towards. When I'm a special education teacher and I'm okay, child needs to work on reading, I have 99 different things that I could choose for reading. But if the parents are telling me that the child is really working on, really loves a certain kind of book, and they're trying to understand the stories at home, and that they want some independence, they want their child to have some independence in reading at home. All right, now I've got something that I can kind of narrow down. What am I going to work on so at home that we're seeing this skill carry over? It's the same thing when a parent says, I really want my child to understand the difference between an acquaintance and a friend. All right, now I've got somewhere to go as a social worker, as a teacher, as a speech therapist, some concepts that we can work on. I want to see parents really give that bigger vision with specifics. And here's one of the best ways that you can do this. The things that make you cry, make you lose sleep, or make you want to pull your hair out. Those are the specific situations when you're like, I just wish this. Whatever that is, you got to share that with the IEP team, because that's what they can use their expertise to help you with. I just wish I could cook dinner, like boil the water for the macaroni and cheese without having to do 10 other things at the same time, because my child does not have the ability to be independent for 10 minutes. All right, guess what? The IEP team has the skills to help you, help your child become independent so you can cook dinner. And that type of situation that you're describing, the IEP team's like, yes, let me dig in. And you know what? There are a lot of skills in that. Everything. There's math skills, reading skills, independent play, safety, all different things. And this can be used within the school environment. Independent learning is really important in our schools, whether we're talking in a specialized classroom or we're talking in a general education classroom, assemblies, library, the hallway. These are skills that are not just helpful at home, but they're helpful at school. But you as a parent need to describe these situations, and that's your input to the IEP, again, to help guide the entire team to work towards skills that are important in all areas. All right. Let's go to the next one here. Oops. I gotta move something on my way on my screen here so I can see it too. Our present levels of performance crystal clear. So by crystal clear, I mean, seriously, I need to be able to pick up your child's IEP and go, oh, this is what they're working on. And then I have to be able to go to Amazon and buy all the supplies that I would need. Like, oh, okay, they're working on 1 digit plus 1 digit math. Got it. And these are the type of manipulatives that they use. These are the types of visual prompts that they need. Oh, okay, here's their ability in reading. These are the type of books or flashcards or resources that I would need. I need to be able to pick it up and say, how long is the child able to have independent skills? And then what are the tools that are used, right? So the child can work independently and follow 2-step directions with these supports. I need to be able to get all of those. It's like the stranger test. We talk about this all the time in special education. Usually when we're talking about goals, like you should be able to pick up, a stranger should be able to pick it up and know what your child's working on. That's great. But again, I want to step back a little bit further and say, we need to know, where's your child starting at? Not just where are they going? Because if we hop in and like, okay, let's work on this. We have to have a very clear foundation of what do they already know before we start working on the new things in there. All right. Next page, here we go. How are accommodations and modifications implemented? Again, on every IEP, there's a list of things for every child. So it's like extended time, visual supports. So whatever that list is, I want you to be very clear on how they're being implemented. It's one of the first areas that I would go to. So I worked one-on-one with families and with schools for 20 years. And now I do not work one-on-one with families because I spend my time training master IEP coaches to work with families. So, but one of the places that I would love to look at, like, and when I say that, I mean, because I could dig into it, is accommodations and modifications, because most of the time when a child's day is falling apart, when progress is not being made, it falls back to the little things that make a big difference. And we could see huge changes when a child got the accommodations and modifications that were supposed to be there, but they weren't. And you know what? I'm not going to talk about blame and why weren't they, and somebody needs to pay for that. That's a lot of our feel in special education. And yes, there are times that we need to say, okay, what's the compensatory action that needs to happen? But right now, especially where we're at in the school year, it's kind of like, okay, if your child is supposed to have sensory breaks, what does that mean, first of all? And who's documenting it, and how are they being initiated? If your child's supposed to have extended time, if they're supposed to have visuals, if they're supposed to have visuals for their schedule, do they have visuals all throughout their day? A lot of times there's visuals that are used in the special education classroom, but then the visuals are not brought to, the playground or to library or to the assembly. And then we wonder why a child falls apart. It's because they lost their support when they went to one of the most challenging places for them. All right, do we need any further data to make great decisions? How many times have you sat down at an IEP meeting and said, okay, here's what's happening, let's decide what to do next? But there's no actual data. It's based on feelings. We really feel that the child is escaping the room because we really feel that the child could go to the general education gym class. We really feel that. That's like, whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, ding, 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 red flag. Like, I want numbers. I want data. And if at bare minimum, I want a journal, like teacher observations with some details that we can kind of pick apart, because guess what? None of our memories are good enough to remember all the things that happened before, during, and after a situation. It just doesn't work that way. So one of the ways that we can make sure that we have this data is, again, when you hear the we feel or I feel, when you hear that, we don't want that to happen. The other thing that I want you to know, this do we need more data? It also can go the other way of what data is being used to make this decision. Because again, you all have gone to an IEP table where it feels like decisions are being made for you. This is what's happening next. And it's like, can I see the data before you get mad? Okay, at least before you blurt out, how about that? Like, just kind of take a breath and go, what data is being used? Well, we just really feel, that's not good enough. It's not even that the team is wrong. I'm not saying that the team is wrong in any of it. Here's the thing, I'm never going to throw a team under the bus just for the sake of like, hey, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't sound right. I'm just saying, let's slow it down for a minute and say, where's the data for this decision? Well, it's just something that we've observed. Great. Well, if you've already observed it, but you didn't write it down, then we need to wait a little bit, and I need you to observe it again. And I want to know dates and times and things that are happening. All right. I love this one. Does anyone need further training to make the IEP happen? So just last night, I recorded a bonus training for the Master IEP Coach Mentorship. It was a panel of teachers, therapists, and parents for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have this training for Master IEP coaches is because a teacher wrote to me and said, this school year, and said, I have a new student on my caseload and she receives hearing itinerant services. We don't have that. I've never had a child with a hearing deficit. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And she's reaching out to me. I'm like a stranger on Instagram to her. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she does not have the training that she needs. You know what? And she's trying to find it. She's trying to figure out what's going on. What I really want to do, well, first of all, I gave her a ton of resources. And then I thought, okay, now I need to build some resources for Master IEP coaches. But what I really want to say to the parent is, oh my goodness, like you have to make sure as a parent that you are double checking. Do you as a parent need any training? And I mean that, meaning if your child has an AAC device, if your child has things that are being implemented during the school day that you're just like, I don't even know how to do that at home, then you need training. And yes, they can go on the IEP, or if there are things that your child needs that the team is not trained for, the IEP can facilitate that. Like, we can put in the document to make sure that that happens and it becomes accountable. So that is very important to make sure that training is addressed throughout the IEP process. I also want you to explore, are there further options for inclusion? Inclusion is not taking a child who has a disability and plopping them into a general education classroom and say, inclusion. Like, that's not how it works. So inclusion is a feeling. Inclusion is an experience. All of us have gone into a room where we did not feel included because it was not set up. Nobody said hi to us. Maybe everybody else had name tags and we didn't have one. That happens in school all the time. All right. Inclusion does not just have to happen in art and music and PE. No. Some of the best inclusion plans that I've seen in action, and some of the favorite, well, I get pulled in sometimes to districts to do some crisis intervention, especially when it comes to inclusion, just kind of figuring out where the hole's at. Why is this not working? And there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, but one of the best resolutions, we're just going to kind of jump ahead to the resolution, was that this child was sitting through his inclusion, was sitting through the general instruction for 20 to 30 minutes of reading. This was a third grader with Down syndrome, about that age range. And sitting through all this instruction, it was not adapted for him. It was just sit through the instruction. So really the goal there was to sit and look like you're paying attention. And then when everybody broke up into their small groups and did independent reading or like skills with the teacher, you know, we all know, like sit in a little small group with the teacher, rotate to different centers, do some independent work. That child left and went to a special education room. And I was like, wait a minute. We need to flip this. Why are they like, well, he's done at this point. He really doesn't want to be here at this point. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't speak French. So if I go sit into a French lecture and I'm expected to just kind of take it all in, and then when I finally get to talk to my peers about like what happened in class or what's going on or do some independent reading next to them, I'm pulled from the class. That's not an effective use of my time. Like that, he wasn't understanding what was going on. What actually worked out was the students got their direct instruction from their teacher in the general education room. The child got his direct instruction in reading because he had resource minutes at that same time. Then when it came time for that independent reading and what I described there, the child went and joined, and people say, well, then he interrupted the class. First of all, no, he didn't. He's not an interruption. No. Second of all, when you walk into Starbucks, when I walk into Starbucks and I've got like my iPad or my book, I've got to figure out like, what do I want for a snack? And I'm going to go get a drink, and I look around and I have to find a seat. And am I going to talk to people? Am I meeting people here? Am I working by myself? That's the life skill, to figure out how to enter a room and be with your peers. So, you know, kind of reversing this inclusion experience and choosing a different time. Now, guess what? That child ended up building relationships, and that he did end up staying for the whole time of reading eventually by the end of the year. But we had to make it an inviting experience, that inclusive feeling, and kind of break the patterns of how he was feeling because it wasn't working and he wasn't supported. Let's see. We have a question that says, my 6-year-old has an OGCOM device, and I've tried to get training for teachers, para, et cetera. No one has been allowed into the school because of COVID. And when we tried to get it scheduled on Zoom, it couldn't happen because of schedules. I want us OGCOM usage on the IEP and have been told it isn't needed. What is the best way to get goals for this? Okay, so first of all, violations everywhere. And by violations, I don't mean like legal, go, sue. I'm not saying that. Okay, what I'm saying is your child has a communication device, and in order to access their environment, in order to access their education, they need to be able to use this device throughout the school environment. In order for this device to be used, the staff needs to be trained so they can communicate effectively with your child in order for your child to have access to their education. In fact, go back and watch the replay, and then you're going to write down all those words. Okay. So you're going to use you need to speak in the way of accessing. When they are denying use of an OGCOM device, now I'm going to assume that the school is in support of using the OGCOM. There are some situations where the parent will go get a communication device from the insurance company, and then it is a different kind of negotiation to get that used into school because school is not on board with using it. They don't feel that it's an appropriate tool. But assuming that the school agrees, like this is appropriate, we just don't have time for it, or this is appropriate, but we're not going to get trained on it. We absolutely need to talk about accessibility and that they are denying your child the ability to communicate with staff, with other students, and then you have to get everything in writing. So you're going to use the words that I just said, you're going to formulate that into an advocacy letter, and then you're going to submit that in a way of saying, if the training cannot be completed within the next 30 days, please put all reasoning and data to support this decision in writing. You need to ask for them to put specifically in writing. What you're asking for the school to actually put in writing is, we will not get trained. Here is the data on why we are completely capable of doing this without any further training. Here's the documentation of that. You have to get their no in writing. So a lot of this, they say, and I pull this apart all the time. If we're ever in a workshop and, we're in person, I was like, they say, what does that mean? They say, do you have it in writing? Do you have the exact email? Okay, I want to see what the email says. And then I want to see what you asked to get that question. Did we ask the right question to get the right response in writing of what they're denying? So 100%, when it's agreed upon that a communication device is appropriate for the child, then the staff needs to be trained, the parents need to be trained, and we need to integrate that device into the goals. We have a really great master IEP coach who I believe is one of the people that's connected here is Courtney. And so Courtney Burnett is our, master IEP coach, who's an expert at AAC and goals and getting the training and the experts in there. So I'm going to encourage, I'm not saying this person's name out loud just for confidentiality, but Michelle, if you could connect this person to Courtney, I can tell you Courtney will help you get that done in there. So, all right, let's go. Who decides if it's appropriate to use the device? I'm going to pass that one over to Courtney also, because there's a lot of different ways to have it as approved or accepted or appropriate and for it to be a team decision. Again, that is Courtney's area of expertise. And she can help you because that is an in-depth question. Like we'll end up talking advocacy all day long if I start getting into that. We need some documents. We need to see what data has been taken. There's a lot of information that I would need to decide kind of where are we at to figure out how to get the school on board with next steps. All right. Do we need to explore more technology? Well, look at how that just rolled in there. So more technology can mean anything from an AAC device, but it also can mean things like Chromebook, knowing how to use Google. It can also mean learning how to use the calendar or alarm functions on an iPhone. It can mean an Apple Watch. It can mean a lot of different things. I'm not saying the school's going to go buy everybody an Apple Watch, okay? But what I am saying is that if the child has technology that can be used for independence, for reminders, that can be used for safety, that can be used for their academics. This is where the world's going. Remember, further education, employment, independent living. We need to be looking forward, not backward, not 1980s special education goals. So do we need to explore more technology? We all know when the world shut down, when that happened, we're not going to talk about that. But when the world shut down, we know that students went home with their technology. Our general education students went home with their Chromebooks or went home with their logins. At least if they didn't have the device, they at least had logins. Our students in special education, it took months for some of them to even get a Google password to be able to get into, a Google Drive where the parents could then help track IEP goal data. Simple stuff was taking forever for us to get on the same page. It was like just archaic for our special education population. And I want to make sure that we're thinking about this going forward, because we are being left out. Most special education departments are being left out of the technology decisions that are being made for the district. I am not asking, most of the time, I am not asking for something that is much different than the general education peers. Yes, an AAC device is different. Yes, there's apps on an iPad. Yes, but I'm talking about technology even outside of that. I want to make sure that your child is having equal access to the technology that is being provided to other students in the district. Now, the last question that I have, which means that if you have another question, pop that into the chat box before we close this out. But the last question I have is, does this IEP goal apply to the real world? I am passionate. I get on a soapbox when it comes to this. I'll give you a quick example. I use this one all the time. It starts an argument sometimes. That's okay. I can handle it because I've been through this for like the last 10 years, where I do not want to see in an IEP a goal for money based on a child counting pennies. Money management in these days and going forward is not knowing penny, nickels, dimes, and quarters. I am not saying that a child cannot know penny, nickels, dimes, and quarters. This is a big differentiation. I am not saying that a child can't learn how to read an analog clock. I am not saying that a child can't learn those. What I'm saying is that we have a limited amount of time in a school day for a certified special education teacher to be working with a child who has an IEP. And we need to prioritize the goals that are going to have the biggest impact on further education, employment, and independent living. I do not count my pennies at Target, and neither do you. I'm not saying, again, that your child can't know those things. I'm saying, do we need to write a goal for it? And do we need to take data? No, we don't. Greater than, less than, rounding, estimating, budgeting, which is greater than, less than, right? I want to buy this, which is greater. How much this costs? Or the money in my bank, right? So do I think that dollars are okay? Sure, I do. However, do I think that we should stop our money management skills at dollars? Like if a child can't master dollars, do we not go on to budgeting? No, but I see that all the time. I'm telling you, if it's not you, it's one of your friends, or it's one of your friends' friends that has an IEP where their child's been counting pennies for 4 years. Stop. Like, just no. Like, and I make sure that when teachers hear this, that I'm saying, if you want to teach pennies kind of like on your own time in the classroom, great. But we're not asking for data on it. We don't want the one-on-one time between you and this child to be on it. We don't want you to spend your time, your IEP time, working on this. Now, if it happens to be a money activity where the paraprofessional in the classroom is working on change with everybody, just because that's part of the money curriculum, okay. But it doesn't become a priority between you and the IEP team and that document and data and this preparation for the future. Let's see, math concepts around budgets plus a calculator is a better goal. Let's talk about calculators just for a second. I am in support of calculators. However, what I am not in support of, I'm going to break this down because this happens all the time. Somebody will tell me, my child can do math. They can do calculator math. Okay, but are they doing math, or have they learned to match the numbers on the worksheet to the numbers on the calculator? Are they doing math, or are they matching? Okay. And again, the person who wrote this, I'm not picking on you. This is one of the things that we have to differentiate. We have to make sure that if I say a child knows 4 plus 4, if they have a calculator, do they know that if I need 4 apples and I need 4 more apples, that I actually need 8 apples? Do they know the math concept of more and we're adding to something, or do they know how to copy? Just so you know, copying is not a bad skill. Copying, my brother who's 44 with Down syndrome, he cannot write most words independently. He cannot spell. Okay, he can write his letters. He can form the letters with a pencil, but he texts me, right? Technology, he texts me. And when my mom's not around, And being that my brother lived very close to me for a long time, but he lived with my mom. But if my mom was not around and he knew that I was around, he could copy the letters off of things like the milk carton, his favorite shaving gel, the laundry detergent, and then he knew how to write the word now. In other words, he was getting low on those things and he wanted me to go get him milk now, or laundry detergent now, or things now. He could communicate with me because he could copy things and he knew some key words. Copying is not bad. However, if we're looking at calculators for math, if we're looking at reading and writing skills, we need to make sure that we are working on the concepts and the understanding of it and not just copying. And with that, I'm going to get off the soapbox because I could go on all day about all the things that we need to make sure that we're measuring the true thing and not just saying it and it looks like it on the outside, but when we kind of like go behind the curtain, the skill is not there. All right. You will get a sheet here to help figure out your top 3 questions out of those 12 that you're going to get started with. And of course, there's some information on how we can connect further. Anything from the Special Education Inner Circle podcast, which is at no cost. It's podcast. It's out there. It's on all the different platforms. I have a Special Education Inner Circle membership. That's where we take the podcast to the next level. That's like where we work on these conversations of what do we do next and how does this all work? And then I bring in experts for you. And then of course, there's the Master IEP Coach Mentorship. That's where I teach you to become a Master IEP Coach so you can both help yourself and help others. But all of those links, all of those things will be there. The most important thing is for you to take these 12 questions and not get overwhelmed. Like don't do the whole like shove it in a drawer or just file it digitally and not take it because it feels like a lot. Take these 12 questions, figure out your top 2 or 3 and get the conversation started. Michelle, that's what I have for you today.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was very informative, and I'm thrilled that you went into such detail, especially about how you create information for the real world, right? Like how do you create these IEPs so that they're tangible, right? And they're gonna mean something at the end of the day, because I've talked to parents who have IEP goals that are like, oh, can you play with this in a certain way? And it's like, well, what does that matter? Like, that's not going to end up doing anything for that child as they grow up. And so I love that your focus is, and that's always our North Star, is kind of that independent living. And how do you get there? But you get there from the very start, right? You can't be like, at 18, I'm going to all of a sudden know how to live independently. You have to grow those skills. And I love that you build that into the IEP, because there are those experts there who can really help us pave that way. And I think that that's really great. One question I know that has popped up on a lot of different platforms lately has been an issue with schools being very understaffed right now during COVID. And I know that there's a lot of concern with children who are supposed to have one-on-one aids and are not getting them. What do we do as parents if in the IEP it says our child is supposed to have a one-on-one aid, but the school is understaffed by like 10 people?
Yeah, it's a real problem that's happening right now. First of all, there's a podcast that I just recorded from a couple of weeks ago. So if you go to the Special Education Inner Circle, wherever you listen to podcasts, or it's on my website also, go listen to that, because there's 3 solutions. It's a quick one. It's like under 10 minutes, but it gives you 3 solutions for staff shortages. And I will tell you that they're not just pie in the sky solutions. They're real things that you can be doing to bridge this gap that we're in right now, because there is not an end in sight. There's just not, there's not an end in sight of the staff shortages. There always has been in special education, a staff shortage. Everybody's been through this, but it is at a massive level right now. The first thing that I want to make sure is that the child is safe. I don't care what it takes. Let's make sure safety first. Okay. So, if that means that your child, and I'm just going to kind of go to an extreme, has to go to a different placement in the meantime. So they're not at home, but maybe they're not where they were kind of scheduled to be because it is unsafe for them under the current conditions. There can be a temporary placement change. For some, that means going to a more, what a lot of people would say would be more restrictive environment. I have other feelings on that. Just my brother went to a therapeutic day school, which gave him the most freedom and independence than he would ever have had. So a lot of people consider that more restrictive. For my brother, it was less restrictive. So when I say a change in placement, I don't know what that might mean for somebody, but it's something that you can consider and that you may need to bring up, because safety is our number one concern when we're having a staff shortage. The second thing is that I want to make sure that everything is documented very clearly. Again, not because we're going to hunt somebody down and throw them under the bus because things were so wrong and they didn't try and all those things. We can't change, like I can't magically make a body show up and to do this, but I can document. So if a child is not making progress, so now we're going to assume they're safe, but they're not making progress. If they're not making progress, and one of the reasons is because they don't have the supports that they need, then we can look at alternative ways to help the child make progress. Sometimes that means bringing in a third-party vendor, is what I'm going to say. That might mean that a school district would be paying for the child to go get speech therapy at an outside office because, in the community outside of school hours, because a speech therapist is not available. Or when it comes to the aid, that maybe that aid is supposed to be helping the child through large group instruction, because they can't learn in a large group. They can only learn in a small group, and they've kind of got small groups figured out. But then once you get to a large group, like there's not enough people to take care of all of the kids and what's going on in that. So we might see some regression in things like being able to follow two-step directions or in their independence with that. So there's different ways for us to bring in other professionals, but documenting things so we can figure out how is it affecting the child is very important.
That's wonderful. And I loved your talk too about the AAC devices. My son has one, and what we're starting to figure out is that in his self-contained classroom, all of the paras and teachers are very well trained on how to use it and how to teach to it and all of that. But then when he goes into the typical classroom, those teachers are not. And so can you in your IEP request that the typical population
Yes.
teachers are trained in the AAC
Yes.
device?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you know what? Some other children, some general education children can be included in that training also. So so that may not formally go into the IEP, but if you have an AAC goal that includes socializing, conversation exchanges with a general education student, then guess what happens? The other students learn how to talk. It is no different than a child who is deaf or hard of hearing, who uses sign to communicate. And then we teach some kids in the classroom some signs so they can socialize with the other child, right? In the classroom, it's no different. So yeah, you can have social time with general education peers written in, which would then naturally, and then I'm not saying that we're writing it in there so the general education student becomes part of the IEP, right? But socializing and having exchanges with general education peers, absolutely, that happens all the time. That happens for children who don't have AAC devices, right? It's like child will, have these social experiences. So I'm not going to get into goal writing right now, but social experiences on the playground with peers. So we need to make sure that we have with peers. We need to make sure that we have with peers in the general education environment. And again, I'm not looking to take away any of the instructional time for that general education peer, but there are ways to integrate it into naturally occurring routines. So not only does the general education teacher know how is a general education teacher going to help take responsibility for a child's education if they cannot communicate with the child? And I could go on forever about that. And that's one of the things that I'm very focused on as we move forward and we're getting back to our routines, and to do that is that our general education teachers often do not feel responsibility for our students who have IEPs. The para then becomes the responsible person, and they're supposed to, mimic whatever the general education teacher's doing, help them just get by. There needs to be a flip in thinking, which I'm working on, y'all. I can't change everything overnight. But I am putting it out there and working on different things and connecting with general education teachers to understand that they are part of a complete IEP team and taking ownership. It's, here's the thing. It's not their fault, as in they're not trained. They're not given the time to be trained. As you say, that I don't really know a general education teacher would be like, no, I will never learn how to push buttons on there because I don't want to talk to that child. That's not the field. The field's, I don't know how to do it. Nobody's ever showed me. Nobody's taken the time. And you know what? It's not mandatory. And so nobody's taking time to put it into the schedule. So can you use the IEP to do that? Absolutely.
Awesome. That's really great. I know also in the beginning of the year, we had a few parents who were very concerned because they were getting feedback from their teachers that they weren't even reading the IEPs, which is just kind of flooring to me, but it was happening often enough that I took note. And I was wondering if that's something that you are seeing too. And I'm not sure if that's just, there's an overwhelming thing that's happening in the system right now where people aren't really catching up or paying attention to IEPs. I don't know if you've seen
Happened
more
all the
of that.
time.
Okay.
All the time. It's not, in my opinion, it's no better or worse than it has ever been. It is, it's part of the problem. And so there are strategies that we talk about in the Master IP Coach Mentorship. Okay. We have to go beyond just the all about me page, right? Like, here's a cheat sheet on my child, their likes, their dislikes, or that, that's one strategy. But then how do we make sure that all of these things are being done? If you kind of reflect back to the 12 questions that I just talked about, like, how are the service minutes being met? Guess what that makes somebody do? Go look at the service minutes and then figure out, or what's the full continuum of placements? Oh, let's go to the placement page. Oh, how's the data being taken on each goal? Then we got to go back, because how the data is taken on your child's IEP versus somebody else's IEP is different. It's going to be labeled different. So these finer points that I've asked all of you to go out and ask, it makes somebody go back to the document and figure out what's supposed to be happening.
Awesome. I love that.
Michelle, I have to go. Yeah. I actually have a room full of master IEP coaches that are waiting for me virtually, that are ready for me to start in just a few minutes. So I'm excited because I get to help them get more information out to all of you. So I want to say thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for answering questions. And I'm excited to share that PDF with the group. I think we had over 100 people register for this webinar. So I know that they're going to absolutely love getting that. Thank you so much for all of this information and for sharing your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you know what? I just want to send some hope and encouragement, guys. I know that you feel like you're coming into this school year with so much to do and so much to accomplish. You know what? Pick your priorities. One thing at a time. You'll create a domino effect. And I promise this can be a really great school year. You just have to figure out, what do you want to do first? Get started, take a breath, and realize it's not all going to get done at once, but you can get it all done. So bye, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for watching this educational webinar. For more resources like this one, you can visit careforthecaregivers.org.